You all so much for joining us here virtually for what we're calling an info plus action session. We wanted to take a lot of energy and interest that has grown in the movement for nuclear disarmament around the country, around the globe, and here in Texas, and share information about how folks can get more involved, why this issue is more important now than almost ever in our nation and our world's history, and invite you all to engage in your community, whether you're located in Austin, Amarillo, San Antonio, and beyond, to engage in this issue. My name's Cooper Christiansi. I'm on the steering committee of the Texans Ending Nuclear Dangers. We are the Texas state hub of the National Back from the Brink campaign, which is the largest grassroots movement since the Freeze campaign of the 1980s, to call for nuclear disarmament and to more specifically call for the United States to take the lead on nuclear disarmament. And we'll talk throughout the rest of today, or at least the rest of this 1 hour this evening, on how you can get involved in this movement. Typically at our normal monthly meetings, we will go around and introduce each other. But for the purposes of having this info session, if you just want to put your name and location in Texas and any organizations you're a part of in the chat, that would be lovely. Our About the two presentations that we'll give today will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have the rest of the time to answer questions and to chat together collaboratively. Those two presentations are going to be recorded, but during the Q&A and conversation portion, we'll turn off the recording. So the info part of our info action session is going to be presented by someone who has truly been on the front lines of the Back from the Brink movement, and I can't think of anyone better to help us think collectively and collaboratively about nuclear disarmament and the urgency of that cause today. And I'm happy to welcome Dr. Peter Wilk. He is the administrative chair of the Back from the Brink steering committee. So that means that he has helped shepherd the Texas state hub of Back from the Brink since its very inception, even though he's only an honorary Texan, being a New Englander. So we're happy to have him, and hopefully he'll come visit us soon to take advantage of the Texas heat. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter, who will be talking a little bit about the urgency of nuclear disarmament and why our community should be organizing at this moment.
So thank you so much, Cooper. It really is a pleasure to be with you all tonight. It's been a pleasure to work with Tend for a couple of years now, at least. I want to extend a big thank you for all the work you've done, Cooper, to engage other Texans in this effort. I'm going to begin by sharing a little about how I actually became involved in advocating for changing U.S. nuclear policy. In 1981, I was a young doctor, and a friend took me to see a film called The Last Epidemic, which documented a series of conferences in the cities across the country outlining the growing risk of nuclear war actually happening and the consequences for our fragile planet. I was just beginning a career to help improve individual patients' lives, yet I realized then that I also should spend at least some amount of time each week trying to help prevent this huge global catastrophe. So I became involved with Physicians for Social Responsibility, a local chapter of which is helping to lead the Texas Back from the Brink Hub. I attended the 1984 World Congress of International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War in Helsinki. I was so impressed with one of the leaders who spoke there. A few of you may know him, Dr. Bernard Lown. He's no longer alive, but he was a leading figure back in the day. And I was really impressed, and I went up to him after he spoke to thank him for all he was doing. And in his characteristic manner, he responded simply by poking his finger into my chest and saying, "Don't thank me for what I'm doing. Think about what more you can do to help prevent this from happening." And that is just classic Bernie. And at first I was a bit taken aback, but then I actually did take his words to heart. and I pledged to become more involved and figure out how I could do my part to help with this change that is really so necessary. And of course, we have our personal lives to live. We have families, friends, obligations of all sorts, jobs. It's important to find joy in our lives and put this kind of serious tragedy out of our minds. And yet, we each have to do something to help prevent this catastrophe. Since 2017, I have channeled my efforts into the Back from the Brink campaign. And after I've finished my remarks, Cooper will share more about how you can get involved with Back from the Brink in Texas through TEND, which is, again, Texans Ending Nuclear Dangers. My task this evening is simply to share some basic information about the threat nuclear weapons pose. The first nuclear test explosion was called the Trinity test, and that was 51 years ago on July 16th. Just last week was the 51st anniversary. It was near Los Alamos, New Mexico. It was the culmination of what was called the Manhattan Project. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the United States dropped nuclear bombs, one on Hiroshima and then another on Nagasaki. The bombs completely destroyed both cities. Approximately 250,000 human beings were killed in the initial massive explosions and subsequent fires and through acute radiation poisoning. Most current nuclear weapons in the arsenal of the 9 countries with them use both enriched uranium and plutonium to trigger a hydrogen fusion explosion reaction that is much more powerful than those early atomic bombs. A global nuclear arms race then followed, accelerating during the 40 years of the Cold War with the then Soviet Union, culminating in a massive arsenal of over 60,000 warheads deployed and stockpiled in the 1980s, a staggeringly massive amount of overkill capacity. There was a parallel growth in public outcry, demonstrations, demands to change course, culminating in a change in nuclear policies to some extent. Arms control negotiations began, and there were a series of nuclear reduction treaties. Unfortunately, the last of those treaties has now expired. It was the New START agreement. There are still approximately 12,300 nuclear warheads in the world today, with almost 95% of those in the US and Russian arsenals. Thousands of these are smaller, so-called tactical nuclear weapons, which is in some sense actually a misleading term. Yes, they are designed to be used on a battlefield in military situations, so they're tactical in that sense. Yet some of these tactical weapons actually have the explosive power of the bombs that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are massive, massive bombs. Use of them would spread radiation, killing thousands of people, perhaps tens of thousands of people, depending on which way the wind was blowing. Currently, the US and Russia have approximately 1,550 of the larger so-called strategic nuclear weapons. China is estimated to have approximately 600 of them. Each has an explosive yield averaging 25 times larger than the single bomb that destroyed Nagasaki. Currently, there are no international agreements limiting the size or number of nuclear weapons. Think about this for a moment. Think of how the attack on the World Trade Center disrupted the global economy and how the Iran war is threatening stability around the world. Compared to these impacts, the use of just a single nuclear weapon could obliterate an entire city and have catastrophic impacts on all the health, food, economic, and social systems that our lives depend on. The destruction of dozens or even hundreds of cities across the globe in a nuclear war would lead to millions, perhaps even hundreds of millions, of immediate deaths from the blast and radiation poisoning. Even worse, firestorms would be triggered and would create massive amounts of dust and ash rising into the higher atmosphere, resulting in a nuclear winter, likely leading to several billion people around the world dying of starvation. It's this reality that I had to absorb when I watched the last epidemic 45 years ago. And it's this reality that I'm asking you to consider today. Every person alive has to think about this to some extent, or to try to put it out of their minds because it seems so crazy, so completely unacceptable. One effort to cope with this unacceptable reality involves assuming that there are experts in our military, in the Russian and Chinese militaries, in other countries with nuclear weapons, that they are wise and would never intentionally start a war that would end civilization as we know it, and that accidents or miscalculations won't happen. This kind of thinking may help us get through a day. And there are many systems in place to try to prevent nuclear accidents. But this is not really a solution. Accidents do happen in our daily lives with both relatively simple and highly complex technical systems, like with car accidents and airplane crashes. In fact, to be brutally honest with ourselves, we have avoided nuclear war only through good luck. There have been dozens of documented incidents in which technical accidents have occurred and some level of false alarm has been triggered. One international think tank, the Chatham House in the United Kingdom, has documented 12 false alarms that could have triggered nuclear war. Eric Schlosser, who's the author of Fast Food Nation, spent 6 years researching and writing a book, Nuclear Command and Control, A History of False Alarms and Near Catastrophes, documenting many, many more of these accidents. We simply cannot go on this way. Luck is not a strategy. More technical fixes can't prevent this ultimate catastrophe from happening. Artificial intelligence will only give us false reassurance and actually increases the risk. Threatening mutually assured destruction, which is the core of deterrence theory, is based on two flawed assumptions: the assumption of infallible technology and the assumption of perfect human judgment at all times. Back from the Brink takes an alternative view. We assert that there is a better way forward. It is based on the understanding that the risk of catastrophic nuclear war is real, and that the only way to reduce this danger is to change course, to reduce the number of nuclear weapons, and eventually to eliminate them. Back from the Brink was created as a coalition in 2017 by leaders of Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Union of Concerned Scientists, with just this goal in mind. We now have 510 endorsing national and local organizations, 78 municipalities and counties, and 646 local and state officials, all of whom have pledged to support our 5 policy solutions to fundamentally change nuclear policy in the US and around the world. These policy solutions are: number 1, actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear-armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. Number 2, renouncing the option of using nuclear weapons first. Number 3, ending the sole unchecked authority of any president to launch a nuclear attack. Number 4, taking U.S. nuclear weapons off hair trigger alert, which they still are on today. And finally, number 5, canceling the plan to replace the entire U.S. arsenal with enhanced nuclear weapons, which is underway as we speak. Back from the Brink's theory of change is based on 2 simple assumptions. Elimination of nuclear weapons is necessary for our survival, and it is possible to do so. And the second is that the nuclear threat is actually a local threat, and that changing these policies requires local action from all of us. Human beings created these genocidal weapons, and we can eliminate them. We've banned other weapons of mass destruction. We've banned chemical weapons and biological weapons. We can ban and eliminate nuclear weapons. The international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, known as ICAN, that's the initials, has led to a global campaign culminating in 75 countries now, both signing and their governments ratifying the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. An additional 25 countries have already signed the treaty and are working towards ratification. In the US, even during these terribly distressing times that we are living through right now, 91% of Americans support capping US and Russian nuclear arsenals. In the US, we do still have a representative form of government. It's under threat, but it does still operate. Our local leaders respond to local concerns if enough of us exert enough pressure. We have secured 60 co-sponsors on a back from the Brink resolution in the House, which is H-Res 317, and 10 sponsors on a back from the Brink resolution in the U.S. Senate, which is Senate Resolution 323. Some of those representatives are actually from Texas, and we've got a strategy to try to get a few more. Back from the Brink can give you more than hope. We're organizing across the country, including in Texas, to assert that nuclear weapons pose a real and local threat. It is our communities that are targeted. It's our tax dollars that are being diverted from local health, education, and other social programs to pay for this nuclear buildup. We can and must change course. And so, with this sobering intro, I'm going to stop here and turn it back to Cooper, who will share how you can get involved in Texas. And thank you all so much for coming this evening and for whatever help you can offer over the coming days.
Thanks so much, Peter. I always learn a lot when I get to hear you talk, and just really thankful for all of the mentorship and support you've given us over here in Texas over the years. Yes, you're right. It's been quite a few years. We'll have a chance for everybody to ask questions of Peter and myself. But we wanted to take the opportunity to, take this sobering information we're now thinking about in terms of the threat of nuclear war and try to transform it into action. And that's been the goal of Texans Ending Nuclear Dangers and our partner organizations across Texas for as long as we've been around. And I'll chat a little bit more here tonight before we start our Q&A uh, about how we might go about or how we think about going about doing this here in Texas. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully it's showing up for folks. Let me know if it isn't. But I just wanted to start by sort of outlining the three things that we're trying to grow here in Texas through the Texans Ending Nuclear Dangers. And the first one is understanding. You're all participating in that growth here tonight by being part of this session. We want to grow understanding, awareness, knowledge about nuclear dangers throughout Texas. Unfortunately, the ever-present threat of the Cold War has faded in public minds. And that means that a lot of people don't realize the risks still facing all of us as a result of the continued existence and possession of nuclear weapons. So a big part of TEN's work is to start raising that understanding, particularly among young people and people who may not have had the lived experience of duck and cover drills and nuclear Armageddon threats. We also try to build consensus, and this is all part of what Peter was talking about, the back from the brink goal of building consensus across the United States among cities, counties, and states to call for greater action on nuclear disarmament and for U.S. leadership in that regard. That consensus really means that our cities and states need to play a major role in calling for the prevention of nuclear war, to engage in greater advocacy on that front, because it's going to be our cities and our local municipalities that are directly targeted in the event of nuclear conflict. And so we need them to play a major role in building consensus across the United States. And as Peter mentioned, there's about 85 cities, counties, and states that have signed on to the Back from the Brink principles, none in Texas so far. So we're really hoping that we can build energy in that direction. And then, of course, all of that understanding and consensus has to lead to action. And so that really means, these things have to come first because we can't get action without convincing decision makers of the wisdom of preventing nuclear war and the urgency of doing that. And we do several things, both here in Texas and in advocating to our congressional representatives and participating in global disarmament processes that I think you'll be really excited about and directly translate to action. So I do want to say that understanding and consensus are still actions, still important to do, but they're the necessary building blocks to get where we want to be, which is a real diminishment of the risks of nuclear war. I just wanted to say that if you're a part of an organization here in Texas, which you think might be aligned with the 10 action items, the mission to prevent nuclear war, we really invite them to endorse the Back from the Brink principles. They'll be put up on our website along with the other organizations across Texas that have done the same thing. You can see here just a small list of some national organizations that have signed on to the Back from the Brink national group. So if you're a part of a state chapter of any one of these organizations, we'd really encourage you to talk to your state chapter or your local chapter about endorsing the Back from the Brink principles here in Texas. As I said, there's a lot of cities and counties and states that have signed on to the Back from the Brink principles. None here in Texas, but that doesn't mean that we don't think that there are great options. It does mean that we need folks here on the ground working to talk to city council members, to county board members, to encourage them to actually take a stand and to say what everyone knows, which is that nuclear weapons are a disastrous threat to public health, public safety, and human life. And we need to build consensus, even here in Texas, that they can't be allowed to continue threatening life and livelihoods around the world. And then, as Peter mentioned, we have two active resolutions in the House and Senate, and there are three members of the Texas congressional delegation that have signed on to be co-sponsors of these resolutions. They are Lloyd Doggett, Greg Casar, and Sylvia Garcia. Though, as those of you based particularly around the Austin area know, we'll probably lose at least one of these co-sponsors in the next Congress due to the consolidation of Lloyd Doggett and Greg Casar's district, which means we need to be doing more across all of the districts in Texas to get our Congress members to agree to these principles. So, we got the info. It's time for the action. How can you get involved? And we have a couple ways that you can do so immediately here tonight. Links that are coming into the chat as we speak to help you get engaged, to lock into our networks, and to think about ways in which you can contribute to your own unique expertise areas, organizational backgrounds, networks, and location to help drive forward this movement. So the first and probably easiest thing you can do is just sign in onto our member role, right? Doesn't mean you have to do any additional work except maybe read through a couple extra emails a month. But this will let us know more about who you are, what you're interested in getting engaged in, and will help you connect into our network so you know when there are more opportunities to engage on these nuclear disarmament issues as they arise within our communities. We have two open letters to Texas congressional members that we would love your help distributing, signing on to, and then growing. One of them is to Representative Kassar. You just heard that he has signed on to the Back from the Brink resolution, which is incredible. That open letter does thank him for that leadership, but also encourages him to take further leadership by using his position as chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus to have a Congressional Progressive Caucus meeting on the Back from the Brink resolution and encourage more members of that caucus to sign on to this resolution and really make it clear that there's broad-based support for this resolution across the ideological spectrum. We also identified Representative Veronica Escobar as a Texas congressional delegate member who is potentially could be someone who could sign on to the resolution in the near future. Um, 10 members who are living in her district have met with her office, and we're trying to showcase the depth of support among members of her district, residents in her district, I should say, for her support of this resolution. And so, if you live in El Paso area, if you live in the 16th congressional district, or you have members of organizations, friends, family members who do, please feel free to share these links to sign on to those letters with them. We also encourage you to sign on to the Back from the Brink nationwide email. These are going to be less specific to your own, backyard, but still a great way to see what our colleagues across the country are doing and to lock into some of these national and global debates that are happening around nuclear weapons as they relate to uh, military budgets, as they relate to the war in Iran, to the war in Ukraine, to the recent Saudi nuclear deal. So all of these ways in which we can think about the proliferation and rising risks of nuclear weapons and technology is in solidarity with other groups across the nation, across the world. And then finally, as part of signing on to the 10 member role, as letting us know who you are, who you're aligned with, how you'd like to get involved, there are a couple ways that you can directly lock into some organizing opportunities. One is that you can call on the organizations that you're a part of to endorse the Back from the Brink principles. This means the organization is going to be posted on our website as an endorser of the principles, is going to be brought into potential organizing actions and other opportunities to build solidarity among anti-war, disarmament, and peace organizations. Is a great way of building the movement and also recognizing that there's a lot of different spaces in which we can be advocating for peace, disarmament, justice, human rights. And so that would be the other invitation is while you're in these spaces, think about the ways that nuclear weapons might prolong climate crisis or affect health and education, or imperil the human dignity of all people, I think is a great way of bringing those connections and building our network. If you're located in Austin, we already have a local organizing team working on lobbying City of Austin and Travis County elected officials to adopt the Back from the Brink principles. If you're located in any other place across Texas, we'd love to hear if you want to join your own local organizing team and to work in your community to build more awareness among government and community members around nuclear risks. If you're more interested in the halls of Washington, we have a congressional organizing team that reaches out directly to federal government representatives and senators, and would welcome your help. And that's great if you're located in a city that you think probably doesn't have a great shot of being signing on to a Back from the Brink resolution, but you want to be part of statewide efforts around congressional organizing. If you're a student and you're at a university, Students for Nuclear Disarmament is a nationwide student organization that has chapters popping up all over the place. We have a chapter starting at the University of Texas at Austin in the fall. So if you're a UT student, or a UT Austin student, please let us know so we can connect you to those organizers. If you're a UT elsewhere student or a non-UT student here in Texas, please let us know if you want to do your own organizing around Students for Nuclear Disarmament. And so with that, thank you so much again for your engagement. We'll open it up now for questions for either Peter and I. We'll be pretty informal. If you want to raise your hand, we welcome you to engage however you wish. But just thank you so much for showing care for our planet, for the people and other beings on the planet. And I truly think that the more people who stand up, raise their hand, and say this isn't acceptable, the more likely it is that we will be able to continue to enjoy the fruits of our planet and our communities without the threat of nuclear war.